everyone, and welcome to the Women's Soccer Show. I'm Ali.
And I'm Sara.
And we are so excited to bring you so much football news this week. We're going to be talking WSL. We're going to be talking about the return of the NWSL. We're going to be talking Champions League. And of course, we are taking you around the world. There is so much football content for your buck. But first, and most importantly, we are going to give you an update on the Woso Show Fantasy League. We've not done it for a little while, so we're going to bring you bang up to speed of where I am, where Sara is, and where Mike is.
Yeah, we forgot about it. I'm not going to lie. We didn't just forget to share about it. I forgot that we were playing for a second. It was a tough week for me. My update is that it was a tough week for me. Jill Ward was really carrying my team. That was where I would say maybe 50% of my points were coming from across my entire team. So it was a rough week for me because Jill Ward obviously is not playing. We're going to touch on that. So a low 52 points this week, but I'm still within shooting distance of like a respectable place to finish in, I would say. But that's where I'm at. I'm sitting with 911 points, and the first place person is only like 200 points in front of me. So I'm in shooting distance is what I'd say.
Your maths is terrible. You are 300 points behind.
Okay, I am 300 points behind. Yeah, that's right. Now that I'm looking at it, that is correct. But our editor Mike deserves a big shout out because Mike is sitting in 10th place. So shout out to Mike. Mike, you're carrying the team here for the Women's Soccer Show, and we really appreciate it.
Yeah, I was going to say, so it's been flipping about on our league, but currently our first place winner is the Queen City Gunners, and our second place is Sussex by the Sea, and they have got 1,224 and 1,217 points respectively. So you guys are smashing it.
But still in shooting distance for me. Kind of. All right. Without further ado, let's get into it.
So, to kick us off, we are going to talk about a very big game that happened this weekend, which is Arsenal versus Liverpool. This was a huge game for title challenges. This was a huge game for Champions League places. This was just a massive game.
Yeah, this isn't our game of the week, so we're not going to really like dive into the game of it all. There's just there's enough in this game to talk about that it has to be mentioned. And I think the first thing to talk about is that Vivianne Miedema scored her first goal in 413 days. And what a sight it was to see Viv back in her form, because this is the first time I feel like we've seen the old Viv return. And that goal to put Arsenal up, it was a rocket of a shot, and it was healing to see Viv back in her style. And 413 days is no small amount of time in between.
No, absolutely. So we love seeing Viv in her prime, and we feel like she's getting there now, and she's, firmly putting that ACL behind her. But she did have a couple of really, wise words after when asked about how she felt about coming back from this ACL. So we're just going to play a very quick clip of Viv talking about what it meant to her to come back from this injury and to get this goal.
And this audio is all credit to Arsenal. They're the ones who interviewed her. They grabbed this. This isn't ours, so credit to them. But listen to this because it's just so heartwarming to hear her talk about her journey.
Beautiful picture online is after you wheel away to celebrate it, you've got Alessia in the far corner screaming. You've got other players smiling, just like so happy for you. How, I suppose, helpful and integral have they been for you to get back to this point?
So helpful. Obviously, it's been such a long time, even coming back out on the pitch, then even being back out on the pitch, I've had a couple setbacks, missed a couple games again, and I think for me, I wanted to use the winter break as a reset and then come back in and start being me again, and that's exactly what I've done. I feel better, I'm less scared, and I think the last couple games you can see that I've started creating a lot of things for others, and today the girls told me to just go for it and shoot, and sometimes I need to listen to others, so that's what I've done today.
I really, that just grabbed me because anybody that's done their ACL or knows somebody that's done their ACL, which if you've played soccer, you probably fall into one of those categories, unfortunately, knows that there's an element of being scared that is associated with playing again for many reasons, and specifically because after any injury, it's pretty hard to just play and put that injury out of your mind. And I thought it was wonderful on so many levels for Viv to share her journey mentally and how it's taken her a while to get back to a place mentally where she's not scared. And that's not the first thing at the front of her mind, that, oh no, I hope I don't do my ACL again. Because that's the truth of coming back from an injury. And, you know, I feel like in the most terrible way, ACLs are just becoming so prominent in this sport that it's almost like, okay, we'll see her again in 9 months. And then we expect the same person to come back. And that's not how it goes for many reasons, both physically and mentally. And so I love that she shared that. And I love that she shared that after playing like the old Viv.
Yeah, no, exactly. It was so wonderful to see, and that I'm so excited to see where she's gonna go. So excited where she's gonna go.
So Arsenal won that game versus Liverpool. We haven't even gotten into the game, but Arsenal took it 2-0. And with that win, Arsenal get 3 points. They're sitting tied with City, just 3 points below Chelsea. And unfortunately, speaking of City and along these ACL lines, we do have to talk about what we mentioned at the top, the news of Jill Roord having done her ACL. I mean, it's just one after the other. I put out a tweet on our women's soccer show account that was just like, we have no words. And that's the honest truth, is there's really no words. Something needs to be looked at. It has to be the schedule combined with the fewer resources that these players really need more of in order to deal with the load that they're carrying in the schedule. And I've hit a point where I just really do think that nothing will be done about this unless it impacts the men's game as well for a very long time. And that's heartbreaking. But I think that's where we're at, because it's been going on for so long and nothing has changed.
No, nothing has changed. I disagree about the schedule. I genuinely do disagree with the schedule. I don't feel like it is schedule. I think it's more
Well,
about
let me be clear, though. I think it's the combination of the schedule, and it's a heavy load in the schedule combined with the fewer resources that these players have.
I think it's fewer resources, point blank. I think we train wrong. I think we train the women's team how we train men's teams, and that needs to happen. The reason I say schedule is because we say it's not as prevalent in the men's have a strong in English football. I'm going by English football. The men's have a bigger schedule and a stronger schedule than the women. So that's why I don't feel like it's scheduling.
But they have the support for the players,
which is why I'm saying it's
endure
resources. That. So I'm saying it's resources. I think it's resources. I think we are training them like men when we should be looking at other things. You know, equipment is very male based. And we've talked about that. Basically, we're just rehashing because it's just going to keep happening and we're not doing anything. The people that have the power are not doing anything.
And we're saying the same thing, honestly. What we're both saying is that this schedule could potentially work if there were better resources afforded to the players. But in the era that we're in right now, there are not those resources, and thus this schedule doesn't work. So it's one or the other, but one of them has to break. And right now, neither of them are, and that's what we're seeing the effects of, quite honestly. So the heartbreaking way to start this, but just incredible. I mean, the impact this is going to have on City is massive. Absolutely massive. Jill Roord is arguably the most consistent and key midfielder that Manchester City have had this entire year.
100%. And yeah, and the games are won and lost in the midfield. So our heart goes out to her and we wish her a speedy and safe recovery.
Couldn't agree more. And finally, on this Arsenal game, we're kind of looping back and forth, but we had to take that tangent into ACL world. Coming back to Arsenal versus Liverpool, we have to talk about one more thing in terms of Arsenal, and it makes my heart so happy. We haven't gone to talk about it since the transfer window. Emily Fox got her second start in the WSL. Allie, what have you thought of seeing Emily Fox in the WSL so far?
I mean, you're going to be more excited than I am. I think she's made a solid start. I think she is showing the talent and the aptitude that we thought she would. Obviously, they're easing her in a bit, and you know she's getting there. She's going to be great. I want her to stay at Arsenal. I don't want it to be what we've had with other Americans, where it's been a blip and you've gone back to the NWSL. I would love to see her stay, to progress, and to grow under the European game. I think that's going to be so beautiful for her.
I think she will. Honestly, I thought this game was like her coming out party. I thought this was her statement game. It was, honestly, I think an understated game, but it's easy to have an understated game when you play on an outside back position. It was an understated, underrated performance from her. Arsenal scored 2 goals, and she arguably created both of them. There was the second goal, Caitlin Ford's goal. Emily Fox got what we call the hockey assist, which just means the assist to the assist. And then, of course, we talked about Vivian Miedema's goal. And I don't know if Emily Fox was credited with the assist, because that was all Viv's goal. But she found Viv in space at the top of the box. She played that ball, and I thought she played shutdown defense. This was the game for me where I was like, okay, it looks like now she's got her feet a little bit under her, and we're starting to see the Emily Fox that we knew we would see. And it's just as much of a treat as I thought it would be to see her play in the WSL. And I think I just think she's doing a great job so far. I'm so proud of her.
Also, very quickly, I know it's not a game of a week, but I do want to give a quick shout out to Liverpool, because they made it very difficult for Arsenal in that first half. They were shutting them down in every possible way. Shanice van der Sand was doing the ugly work of keeping players off the ball and doing what she does best. And it just showed the difference in resources in the second half. When you've got players like Mead, you've got Miedema coming back. You had Leah Williamson returning after the dreaded 3 letters. Emily Fox. Arsenal just showed the difference in the second half. But I do want to say Liverpool, do not be downhearted by that, because that was a performance and a half. So our first game of the week is one that I brought up because we talked about them last week, and I feel like we've got to talk about it again because this was such a fraught game. Okay, so we're talking about obviously Man United versus Aston Villa. Man United took it 2-1. There is no love lost between these two teams, and boy did it come out in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I was like, I don't want to talk about United again.
Yeah.
But I think it is worth us diving in here because there's a lot to say, and I actually think that I've finally figured out what is wrong with Aston Villa, and I'll use that to say I might sound a little bit hard on the WSL in this episode. I'm a very positive person, and that comes out a lot in how I talk about football. And this past weekend, it was just a disappointment for me. And so I say that to say, listen, I'm not being a downer. Allie's going to bring the positive for you, and I'm going to bring the other perspective because it needs to be said at this point. It really does. Aston Villa, a major storyline of this entire season so far, right? Arguably favorites to vie for a Champions League spot coming in to the league, and now suddenly they're just a bottom of the table, slowly creeping into a middle of the table team, but they've got 4 wins and 8 losses on the year, so certainly not what we expected, and that's what the storyline has been. But I feel like part of that storyline has also been what in the world is happening, because you look at their lineup and you look at their team sheet, and it just seems that something intangible is off. Would you agree?
Yeah, exactly. Because it is. We've talked about fantasy in our build-up, and you talk about on fantasy they've got one of the greatest fantasy teams out of the traditional top 4.
Yes, and from this game, I'm watching Aston Villa for the majority of the game because I think this was a good performance from United. But Aston Villa, what I feel like I've put my finger on here, and it might sound so trivial, but their issue is their work rate. And specifically, it's their work rate on defense. It's not just the sloppiness. It's not just the cohesion. It is full on their work rate. Both of these goals that United scored, I'll just say here, credit to United, credit to Nikita Paris.
I was going to say, Nikita.
Right. They played a beautiful game. And also, it was incredibly sloppy from Aston Villa. Multiple times, you can pause the screen while you're watching this game. The second goal, United had 3 players in the box compared to Aston Villa's 6 defenders. And United are still able to get a wide open shot. It's sloppy. It's a lack of work rate and it's a lack of organization, but it all stems from that lack of work rate. And that's what it is.
You've cracked it. Now, how do they fix it?
No, it's infuriating to me. It really is. And how you fix it is, it depends on where it's coming from, honestly. Like, we don't know what the root of that is. But in my opinion, having played on, having coached many teams, both at the top and at the bottom, I've lost 12-0. I've won 12-0. I've done everything in between. the one thing you can do is control your work rate. And from my perspective, there's just no excuse for an issue, and your main issue being the lack of work rate on defense. There is no excuse for it, period, the end.
No, and you know what? If I am Van Domselaar, I am going to be fuming at my defenders because you have made me look so pedestrian this season. Van Domselaar came in after an amazing Euros and World Cup, was basically said that she was going to do an Imabuchi and be at Villa for a year, and then was going to go to one of, again, the traditional top four. Rumour was it was going to be Man City. And now that's not going to happen because this season has just made her look so pedestrian, and we know she's not. And I think you're right. The defenders at Villa, their work rate, like they're not tracking back. They're not doing your very basic defensive things. Like you said, they're allowing players to turn. That second goal, if Paris hadn't got it in, then Jace would have got it.
You know why Jace would have got it? Because she was sitting unmarked at the top of the box, because Alicia Lehman, you can watch her start to track the playback and then stop. And she stopped right as that ball hit the crossbar. And Jace was wide open because of that. And I'm not putting that all on Alicia Lehman. That's just an example of the lack of work rate on defense.
And let me be honest, someone who used to play for us, Lehman used to do that at West Ham all the time. You'd think that she's had two other managers since then. Someone would have knocked that out of her and would have worked on it and done something.
Yeah, but like I said, though, it's not just her.
No, it's all of them.
Noelle Maritz, the Swiss international, she was the one who was supposed to be picking up Nikita Paris on that play. She's caught ball watching. It's throughout the entire team, and it's not just the defenders. This isn't me calling out the defenders either. It is from defenders all the way to forwards, because forwards, you have to play defense as well. And that was their issue. And that's really what infuriated me while watching this game. And I know, I hope this doesn't bring everybody down, because I think that this is an important thing to point out. This team does still have the potential to beat anybody on any given day if they can figure out their work rate.
Yeah, and also we talk about the defence. This team, they've conceded 24 goals this season. 24 goals.
24 goals across 12 games. And that says it all. 3 shutouts total against Brighton, Leicester City, and Bristol City. And guess what? Those 3 games account for 3 out of their 4 total wins on the season. So when you look at it like that, it's really not rocket science.
It really isn't. Back to Villa, though, we have to talk about that penalty. This is why I wanted to bring it up. This is why I wanted to bring this game.
I knew this is why you wanted to talk about it.
I don't want to focus on Man United, because Man United played. They got back to their style.
I do want to say about United, though, we were hard on them last week, and they made good strides between last week and this week, and I thought they played a really good game. And Nikita Paris, for me, woman of the match. I actually have no idea who got woman of the match, but I hope it was her, because she played fantastic.
I believe it was, because she was Nikita of old and was on it the entire game. But we have to talk about that Rachel Daly penalty, because I have never, ever been so embarrassed to be a women's football fan as I was when I watched that penalty. Because no, she fell over her own feet on purpose to get a penalty, and the ref fell for it. I'm like, this is why I watch women's football too, because they don't do this.
I was going to say, I know where you're coming from. There's immense pride that all women's football fans have, that flopping is not part of our game. And I love that about women's football. So I get where your anger is coming from. It did kind of make me chuckle. Maybe this is where we flipped, and I'm going to provide a little bit of the positive. I mean, let's just say baseline. It was absurd. It should never have been a penalty. At the end, no harm, no foul. United still won the game. So, whatever. So I can laugh about it a little bit, because it's kind of okay, well, good on you for doing whatever you can, really.
No!
That's what that was. It was I'm going to do whatever I can to somehow get a goal for this team.
But Daly, you're better than that. Daly, you are a better player than that.
I agree.
You should not be doing...
I'm not pro-flopping. Let's just say. I agree with you. All right, moving on to our second game of the week. I think one that we might dive into a little more, and one that I definitely am going to have more negative opinions on than Allie.
We're going to have
here.
a fight. We're going to have a fight. You guys love it when we fight, and here we go.
It was the bottom of the table battle between Bristol City and West Ham. Last week, we were talking about if this is the game that truly will decide who ends up getting relegated at the end of the season, and it very well could. West Ham ended up taking this 2-1, which leaves Bristol City sitting at the bottom of the table, 3 points behind West Ham. Wow. Where to even begin? I think it's in the lead up to the game.
I'm going to quickly rotate. I'm going to begin by saying I'm going to completely change everything that I said last week because of how other results happened this weekend. I was very, 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 very on whoever wins this is staying up, whoever doesn't is getting relegated. And then the Leicester-Everton game happened, and then the Brighton-Chelsea game happened. And now I'm like, do you know what? Some other teams are getting pulled into this relegation battle. I no longer believe it's a two-horse race of who's going to get relegated because of different results that have happened. But we can go into the build-up.
I would agree. I still think it's a tall task. If Bristol City can escape this, it will be a great escape. The great escape, as they call it. But we've seen it happen before. I was looking through their schedule and where they might be able to get points. And I agree with you. When you start to look through their schedule, it's like, okay, March 3rd, they're hosting Brighton. That's versus Brighton at home. There's a potential. They're hosting Liverpool, who they've already drawn with this season. We know that they can play them well. Their final match, they're hosting Everton. They could pull it off at the end of the season. But the key right now is that it might not actually be in their hands. Because even if they do win one of those games, they might still go down on goal difference. And so West Ham, for Bristol City's good, the West Ham need to lose. And essentially what that means is basically that it's still in Bristol City's hands, but they need some help, you know?
Yep. So let's talk about the pre-game. Let's talk about the build-up. Let's do it.
I mean, we've got to kick it off with, I think it was 3 days before the match, and news breaks that Lisa Evans, Scottish international, is leaving West Ham, departing for none other than Bristol City, 3 days ahead of this battle. And it was a simple adding of fuel. For me as a neutral, I was like, as if this could get any more exciting. Now it has. So for me, this was a massive positive, but also it raised a massive question for me on what in the world was going on between Lisa Evans and West Ham. Because let's be honest here, you're talking about a team that is facing relegation. You're talking about a talent that can truly impact a game and help a team in a relegation battle. And she's not seeing the field. And then suddenly she flips to Bristol City within what seems like a moment. What in the world was going on between Lisa Evans and West Ham?
I'm going to tell you two things. As someone who's a West Ham fan, I'm going to tell you two things. One, she's 31. She was playing 15, 20 minutes for us, if that. Running the wing, I'll give you. She ran that wing. She did really well. But she was not our best player, and we have solidified her position. So she was getting 20 minutes, if that, here and there. Her and Skinner did not get on. They did not have...
That's what it was, though. Like, everything else before that is whatever. Because at the end of the day...
Yeah, but you want to play. You're 31. You want to get as much game time as possible. And if your manager's saying you're going to be a super sub, you're going to get 15, 20 minutes, you're going to go sod that and go somewhere else.
So I'm happy she's at Bristol City. I'm happy she'll get to see the field more. Yeah. We did get to see her for a full 45 in this game, but a difficult first game back. You've gotten, maybe 2 practices maximum with your new team, and you're thrown in for a full 45. So we'll see how this ends up faring for her. But I mean, oh my goodness. How many times do we see that before a bottom of the table clash and then somebody switches teams 3 days before that? It really just added that fuel to the fire. But let's get into the game here. All right, Bristol City, as we said, lost 2-1 at home. I thought the fans at Bristol City really brought it. I've loved seeing them this season. And disappointing game for them to see. However, Bristol City really made it interesting for a while. I'll say overall, West Ham dominated this game. But there was a moment at the start of the second half when Bristol City equalized, and it was 1-1, and it did feel for a moment like, oh my gosh, we've got a battle. Bristol City might have momentum and they're at home. That was squashed very quickly. And I'll give credit where credit is due. I do think that West Ham dominated this game. They had more shots. They had more possession. They controlled the pace of this game. And they did pick Bristol City apart.
That's the first nice thing you've said about West Ham all season.
That's not true.
That's very true, but yeah.
So I think, fair play. Bristol City didn't show up as they could have. They had a worse game than they had last weekend, and West Ham continued to grow, and they took advantage of it. And so I think this is a really fair scoreline. If I'm either team and I'm a fan of either team, I'm still pretty frustrated, and we'll come on to that. But credit where credit is due, and most of that credit, in my opinion, it goes right to Gory, because Kat Gory, she has been the sole difference maker in West Ham before the break and West Ham after the break. Just full stop. It is Gory. And she needs the credit of being the game changer that she is. She's not just a six that will do the dirty work. She changed this team tactically and emotionally.
100%. 100%. Kat Gory is, and this is the first time, because I was at that game, and it's the first time I've got to see Kat Gory in person play. And my goodness, there was not a blade of grass she didn't touch. She was literally everywhere on that field. She's supposed to be a midfielder. She was controlling the midfield, and then suddenly, Bristol have broken away. Oh no, wait, their player has been taken out by Gory because she took in some tackles. Oh wait, you want the ball to be threaded through to Jesu to get the assist? Like you said, you called it, was it a hockey assist? She got the hockey assist for that second goal because she was literally everywhere on that pitch. And the problem is Bristol didn't know how to deal with her. And that was the key difference, is Bristol didn't know how to deal with someone like that, because they were like, okay, we're marking this player. Wait a minute, we're doing that player I'm marking now not where they're supposed to be. And
well, Bristol City's defense, organization on defense, was as poor as I've seen all season, to be totally honest. Both goals that Bristol City conceded to West Ham were because of a lack of communication and a lack of organization between the defenders, and specifically in the second goal between the center backs. And it was almost a mirror image of what we were talking about United last week, and how their two center backs weren't communicating. And you've either got to step up to force the offside trap, or you've got to communicate and drop to account for speed. And we saw the same thing get exploited here in West Ham's second goal, and Bristol City's two center backs did neither. Actually, one stepped and one dropped, which is not what you want, because then you're caught in a 1v1 foot race, which you can't keep up with. And that's what happened. So credit to West Ham. And I think, we've called out Gory, who had a great game. Viv Asai playing up top for West Ham. She's the one who slotted that second goal home to give West Ham the win and the 3 points. And she was everywhere. She was causing havoc on that back line for Bristol City, not just with her speed, but with her runs and how she would creep in and across the line and then back out and pull defenders in just so she could get that ball over the top. I loved how she played in this game. I thought she was a massive threat for West Ham.
And I would say what was more heartbreaking for me was not the equaliser, was the fact that she scored one of the greatest goals of this season, and it didn't count.
A final note before maybe we look at a bigger picture here, unless you have more to say, Allie, is we got to just spend a moment on Bristol City's goal, because that was a really... Listen, I know they lost, and they lost at home, but that was a special moment in that stadium. And it comes from a goal that is disallowed because West Ham scored, but there were multiple players offside. And Bristol City take advantage. They catch West Ham essentially celebrating a no goal, and they counter immediately. And ex-West Ham player, Thestrup, ends up slotting it home to tie the game up at the beginning of the second half. And that was a big moment. There's really nothing to say about it other than what was just said. But I want to give credit to Bristol City, who, listen, West Ham controlled that entire game. And for them to really try hard to stick to their game plan and continue to look for opportunities to counter, you have to give them credit for that. Because when you're a team sitting in the position that they're sitting in, you've got to take those opportunities when they come. And they capitalized.
Yeah, no, I will. I will give you I can say this now with hindsight and the fact that we did win, but it was heartbreaking for me in the stadium to see us get carved up like that. I do want to give credit. Bristol they did give us a game in the second half. I will say second half they came out much stronger, were fighting harder. First half I don't know what that happened because they had a good 10 minutes and then they didn't even get a shot off from the 10 minutes to half time. Second half, they clearly had a team talk and came out absolutely fighting. They made some changes. I think their game plan originally was to try and bully us off the ball. They brought out their bigger, stronger defenders, their stronger midfielders, and it didn't work. So they then brought their tactical, faster runners. They brought on Morgan. They brought on Evans, we saw towards the end of the first half, and that worked for a little while. That worked in pulling West Ham apart, like we talked about it. Like you had one player pull Mack in one direction so that Thestrop could slot it home for that equaliser, and it worked for a little bit, but then they sort of ran out of steam, and that's what concerns me for Bristol. Is there seems to be a lack of, well, what do we do if it doesn't quite go the way we want it? What do we do?
I'm curious for you, what was your feeling after this game?
Hope.
You had hope.
Genuine hope. And I say this because I'm going to take back what I said last week, because at first, going into this game, I was like, we have to win. If we draw, we can get it on goal difference, but we have to win. And then I saw the results of the other games. We are only 3 points behind Everton, who were horrific against Leicester, and we can talk about Everton's problems next week. Everton were horrific against, it was a bad game to be an Everton fan. Brighton lost against Chelsea. We're only 3 points behind them, and we've got to play both of them. We could theoretically take 3 points off of both those teams, and then we're super safe. So I genuinely came back as hope.
This is where I say something that might upset you, because
Of course you're going to.
Because no, I very genuinely, and you we said at the top of the episode that it might have some more negative or just not super positive things to say. And this was really my feeling in watching this game was, I don't understand, and hear me out on this. I don't understand. I get why after you win, you have hope. You've got these new signings. Kat Gorey's freaking unbelievable. I get that. But when you look at the bigger picture, I don't understand why West Ham fans aren't more upset with their own club. I really don't. It took West Ham looking down the barrel of relegation at the end of 2023 for the club to make any notable moves. And yes, they've helped tremendously. Gorey alone has basically saved West Ham. But it's, for me, absolutely infuriating to see a club that, based on actions from the top, seems to truly just not care, and then decide to throw some money at it when they realize that, oh my gosh, there might be a price to pay for us not caring about this team for a while. And what leaves me infuriated is that I've absolutely no hope that West Ham as a club will continue to invest and try to climb up the table. They've now showed that they can recruit, they can pay for players, they can bring in game changers. But I have zero faith that the people at the top will actually take this momentum and move with it. And that is infuriating to me. And it's not the players, it's not the fans, but I don't know why the players and the fans are not more upset about this lack of care, lack of investment from the top.
We are. Genuinely, we are. And you talk to West Ham fans, we are. The thing is, I don't want to make excuses for my club, so I won't. I will say it's pathetic. It is piss poor, and that they should have done a lot more. They should have brought in Rhian Skinner earlier than they did. They left it far too late, and I will give that. What I will say is there is turmoil in the West Ham investors because one of their main owners died, and then the person taking over, which was his daughter, died within 3 months. So therefore, there was a lot. I know. So there was a lot. So for anybody who doesn't know, David Gold owned a big chunk of West Ham for a long time, and then he passed away from a long illness, and then his daughter Jacqueline Gold died of breast cancer 3-4 months afterwards. So there was a lot of turmoil on the West Ham board at the beginning of this season. End of last season, beginning of this season. And I'm going to be honest, the women's team got forgot. We got forgot. Now, we should definitely have done something before now. We should have done...
Yeah, this is more than a seasons-long problem, though.
Exactly,
This is a many-year-long issue that West Ham have been having, and it's all the same.
It is all the same, and it is, and there is no excuse for it. It does. It annoys me as a West Ham because we could do better. The problem is we weren't an attractive prospect for players. Now we are, but we weren't for a long time. We were not an attractive prospect for players because if you're a really good player, why would you go? If you're going to London, why would you go to a club when you could go to Arsenal, you could go to Chelsea? So for a long time, we got the players that weren't quite good.
But now we've seen that West Ham have the ability to make themselves an attractive club.
Yeah.
We've seen that they can do that. So why did it take so long, and why in the world? I mean, you recruited Rachel Daly, 2-3 years ago, whatever time is, I think it was during COVID, she came to West Ham on loan. And there are little sparks when you look back. You're like, oh, look, they can recruit. Oh, look, they can make themselves an attractive prospect. And then they just every single time keep letting that fall after they'll do it for a moment and then they'll let it slide again. And that makes me have zero hope that they'll continue to do it. But do you see what I mean? Where I'm like, I'm glad you have hope after that game. I personally am a little bit more skeptical that this club will continue to invest in the women's program because based on their actions, I don't believe that they will.
No, but I think you are thinking bigger picture. You are thinking for seasons to come, and you're right. I have no hope about that. Like, I'm not going to lie. I am very skeptical about season to come. My hope comes for this season. My hope comes for the relegation battle in the fact that I don't think it's going to come down to a 2-horse race between us and Bristol anymore. I think there are other teams being dragged into it. I think Everton, Brighton are being dragged into it. Leicester started off bright and are now having an iffy season. There are teams around us now that are going to get pulled into the vortex that both teams have to play. So as season comes along, I have hope. As a whole thing, I don't know. I genuinely don't know because you know what? I'm going to call it out now. We are the only club that hasn't had their team play at the men's stadium this season. We haven't played since 2019 when we played Tottenham. We are one of the lowest attended matches of home matches. We have zero away support. At Bristol, this is the most away fans I've ever seen at a game, and I think it's because it was a relegation battle and the men weren't playing. Let's be honest, that's why they came to this away game. So, as the future goes, I'm skeptical, and I hate that I'm skeptical, but here we are. But as this season goes, that's where my hope is.
Let's go around the world, around the world. It's late in the episode to be going around the world, but here we are.
And I'm going to take you to Scotland. Drama this weekend in the SWPL as Glasgow City beat Celtic 1-0 this weekend, and with Rangers winning their game, this has put a massive dent in Celtic's title chances. Rangers and Celtic face each other on the 18th of February, and a loss for Celtic puts the title firmly in Rangers' hands.
Over to Spain, Barcelona keep that perfect start going after a 6-0 win over Real Betis. The team are also on 14 wins out of 14 matches. Truly unstoppable. Second place Real Madrid managed to squeak a 1-0 win to keep the Champions League qualification alive. A draw for Levante, however, sees them drop to third.
Over to Australia, and it was a top-of-the-table clash this weekend, and it was Western United that took the win over league leaders Melbourne City. A shock loss, however, for Perth Glory versus Adelaide see them fall further down the table after such a promising start to the season.
And over to Mexico, La Liga MX. Just who is going to stop Tigres? Another win sees them atop the table with maximum points still. Monterrey and Pachuca are both piling on the pressure in second and third place, respectively, but it's hard to see if either will be able to catch the league leaders. And finally, over to Italy, a huge matchup in Serie A on Monday saw number 2 Juventus host number 3 Fiorentina. Juventus were sitting just 2 points ahead of Fiorentina heading into the match. This heavyweight battle did not disappoint. Fiorentina scored first and early, but Juventus equalized just 7 minutes later. And just 6 minutes after that, Fiorentina netted another to go up 2-1. They were able to hold on to the lead until the 74th minute when Juventus equalized, and the match ended in a 2-2 draw. This leaves these two teams still separated by 2 points in the table. Roma sit atop the table, 5 points ahead of Juventus, and Roma and Juventus will face each other for the final time in the season this Sunday, February 4th.
Have you checked out Total Football Analysis yet? TotalFootballAnalysis.com provides research analysis on loads of football, including the women's game. Want all the stats in one place instead of drowning in a mountain of tabs? Want to explore key matchups and the tactics from both teams? Total Football Analysis provides the stats and analysis to help you learn more about the beautiful game. We have a special discount for listeners of the Women's Soccer Show. At checkout, type WOSO10 to get a full year for just €10. That's €40 of the yearly subscription. Head over to TotalFootballAnalysis.com and type WOSO10 at checkout.
Over to the Champions League. Now, games are being played both as we're recording and as this is being released, so we can't do a game chat, but we're very excited to talk about the Champions League and continue to bring it into the podcast a little bit more because we're headed in to the knockout rounds after this week. So Tuesday and Wednesday of this week are the final games of the group stage, and we do have a few teams already as we're recording that we know have advanced.
Yes. So, already into the quarterfinals, we have Barcelona from Group A for Spain, Lyon, France from Group B, Chelsea, England, Group D, Braun, who are Norwegian, Group B, and Benfica, Portuguese, in Group A.
So Group A's done, Group B's done. We've got one more coming in from Group D, and Group C right now is up for grabs. 3 spots remain total, and 2 of those are coming from Group C. The only team that's officially out of contention right now in Group C is Roma, and otherwise PSG, Bayern, and Ajax are all going to be vying for those 2 spots. And specifically, we're here to say the quarterfinals will be on March 19th and 20th. Plenty of rest between now and then for all of these sides who have been managing a heavy load of games.
So the big battle is coming out of Group D with Haken and Paris FC. Both those games will have happened on Tuesday, so that's yesterday if you are listening on the day of release. So you can check out who won that as you're listening to us on Wednesday.
And finally, we get to touch on the NWSL because it's official, everybody. Preseason has started. Yes, the off-season was that short. Maybe it wasn't short. Maybe it was. I'm not entirely sure. Certainly felt short because of everything that happened. But we're back. The NWSL teams are already in camp. They're training. And they've also got some games on the schedule.
Yes, so one of the big ones that we're going to be talking about is the debutantes. Bay FC will be kicking off a load of firsts, and the first that they did was they dropped their kit, which we put out on our socials. That it divided the WOSO team because 3 out of the 4 hated it, and I thought it was all right.
The rest of social media seemed to agree with a 3 out of 4.
Yeah, it's just y'all hate a white kit. I thought it was a perfectly serviceable white kit.
All right, speaking of the Bay FC kit, we have a Fits and Kits episode out on our Patreon this week to talk all about that kit. For those of you Utah Royals fans that are wondering, that kit won't drop for another few weeks, so stay tuned for it. And now, let's talk about on the field, because Bay FC have announced that they're going to play their first game ever in less than a month. On February 20th, Bay FC will take on San Diego Wave in both teams' first preseason match. They're going to be playing in a tournament called the Coachella Invitational, I believe. It's mainly historically been a mini tournament that MLS teams play in. And they've added 4 teams. That's Angel City, Portland Thorns, San Diego Wave, and Bay FC to play in this mini tournament. I think it's a great idea for these West Coast teams to just say, okay, let's all go to one place and play each other in preseason. And I think it's going to be really fun to see these teams up against each other. And as always, it's a great time to tune into a brand new team and just see what they're trying to build. Because you can always get little hints and little inklings of what they're trying to do, even from that first game.
Yeah, no, 100%. Sorry, I pulled a face at Sara because when I was like, the Coachella Invitational, Americans were named
I
their
didn't
tournaments
name it,
weird,
okay?
man.
I
I know
didn't
you
name
didn't
it.
name it, but I'm just like, Americans just name their tournaments really weird stuff. I'm like, I don't understand. But no, the main point of that is I am very excited to see what Bay can do because obviously, brand new team, you're picking up players from all over the place to see how you've gelled and how you've come together in such a short period of time. And they're taking on a massive challenge because Portland are an insane team. They've just announced that they have managed to keep Christine Sinclair for her final season.
No
Becky
surprise
Sauerbrunn,
there.
There was no surprise, but Becky Sauerbrun's officially re-signed. Has it been announced Jessie Fleming's coming to them, or is that just a rumor?
It's still rumored that Jessie Fleming is
Yeah.
going to Portland. Yep.
Portland. So, like, Portland's a really strong team. We saw what San Diego did, and heartbreak for Chelsea fans because Casey Stoney has announced that she has extended her stay at San Diego and is going to be there till 2027. And we saw what San Diego did and how they played last season and the talent that they've got there. And you know what? Angel City's not to be sniffed at either. So it's going to be such a baptism of fire for Bay FC, and that's what's going to be exciting.
Yeah. It's going to be so exciting. And then the regular season kicks off with the Challenge Cup's new format of Gotham FC, the champions, hosting San Diego Wave, the Shield winners. This is the new Challenge Cup format. We did a full segment on this on our Patreon, and we're not going to rehash it here because Allie has very strong feelings.
I do. I do. So go check out our Patreon to hear me, like, have my feelings.
Listen,
about this.
In short, I think it's a good first step or a good next step, and Allie can't find any positives about it. So head to our Patreon to hear that discussion. All right. You mentioned some signings for Portland, and I think it's worth noting just some big signings that the NWSL has, as a whole, has made in this offseason because it has to be noted that the NWSL is clearly looking to bring in a lot more international talent than they have been able to do basically since COVID hit. Kind of pre-COVID, the NWSL was the destination. It was before the WSL's rise, if you will. It was before any of those clubs were really starting to pay and invest in their players, with a few exceptions. And when COVID hit, and since then, the NWSL has lost a lot of players and a lot of talent and a lot of coaches. And this offseason has felt almost like a big turnaround in the NWSL, kind of showing the world that they're still a destination for key players, for key coaches. And I think that this is a really big positive for the league. And I think, frankly, it was all born out of the new CBA that allows players to move more freely throughout teams.
I think probably one of the biggest ones we talk about is Maria Sanchez. Maria Sanchez could have gone absolutely anywhere, was a free agent, was probably courted by quite a few big teams, and has gone, do you know what? Houston, let's do this thing. And is staying at Houston, got a nice healthy pay packet, which we talked about, which then got gazumped by
Mel Swanson. Yeah, she was the highest paid player in the NWSL for like 4 days, and then Mel Swanson got her contract.
But that's a huge intent. That is massive intent from Sanchez to stay there.
Couldn't agree more. And other maybe high profile names are, frankly, all of the Brazilians that chose to stay in the league. Burinha of Gotham, Adriana at Orlando, Debinha, Ari Borges. I mean, these are massive international talents. You already mentioned Jessie Fleming, rumored from coming from Chelsea to Portland. That's huge. Feli Range, the German international, just signed with North Carolina Courage. This past week, BFC signed a Venezuelan midfielder who was previously with Manchester City. That's Dana Castellanos. And we haven't even touched on yet, which we did in past episodes, the Washington Spirit recruiting Barcelona's manager, Jonathan Heraldez. I mean, these are big moves, either retaining or bringing in. And I think it's a huge testament to the NWSL and to these clubs truly showing their commitment to grow. And it's happening slowly, but it's happening. All right, so we will have some NWSL content going up on our Patreon to break down each team's off-season move. So stay tuned for that. And don't worry, we will also have plenty of good conversations here on this main show as the season approaches very quickly, too. And for us here at the Women's Soccer Show, I've been Sarah.
And I've been Ali.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
This podcast was edited by Monkey Hill Media. Visit monkeyhillmedia.com for more information.